Yellow Brick War, Chapter 27. That night, a mournful group of the wicked filled the Tin Woodman's palace. 4 beat-up, exhausted witches, a handful of battered soldiers, a half-tin girl, an unusually quiet army of monkeys, and me. I looked over at my friends and companions as Nox and Mombi conjured up a simple meal of bread, cheese, and water. Battle-hardened and weary, we were all filthy, bloody, and bruised. I wasn't sure if we had won, and Dorothy was still alive somewhere, waiting to strike again. It was too much to think about. I remember Annabelle's smile, her long red hair, and squeezed my eyes shut against the tears I could feel coming. I wondered if I'd ever see the day where I could leave the war behind. Somehow the brief moment in Kansas where I'd been able to pretend I was just a normal girl again made everything else worse. All the witches were subdued. The Nox had disappeared soon after we finished eating, and I let him go. Glamora was barely coherent after her battle with Glinda, and sat out the celebration, huddled in a corner with the Tin Woodman's old throne room wrapped in a blanket and nursing a mug of foul-smelling tea that Lulu insisted was restorative. I hope it wasn't made out of the same stuff as the monkey's artisanal napalm. The most seriously injured monkey rested with her. I was worried about Glamora. She seemed more than just tired. She seemed like a zombie. I thought of the monster I had turned into, and I wondered if the spell Glamora had cast to transform herself had made her lose some piece of her humanity. "She'll be fine," Gert said, interrupting my thoughts. She was seated next to me at the banquet hall's long table, and she's been quiet for most of dinner. She just needs to rest. Glinda was one of the most powerful witches in Oz. It's impossible to fight someone that strong without coming out of the battle a little worse for wear. As if she could read my mind too, Mombi waddled over to us. "There's no time for rest," she said. "We have to plan our next move." Gert nodded and went to get Glamora and Melindra. I looked around the hall, where the monkeys curled up into sleepy balls. Lulu was already snoring loudly at the table, but there was no rest for the wicked, I thought ruefully. I followed Gert, Mombi, and Glamora upstairs. This time we found a small chamber with a few unbroken chairs instead of hanging out in the Tin Woodman's bedroom, which made me grateful. Sure, he was dead, and he hadn't lived in this place since before I came to Oz, but it was hard not to see that creepy cabinet where he'd slept without thinking of all the horrible things he's done to people I cared about. Starting with Indigo. My very first few hours in Oz, the Munchkin who the Tin Woodman had tortured to death in front of me after we'd helped the wingless monkey Ollie escape. People who helped me out tended to get hurt in Dorothy's Oz, I thought suddenly. By now the list was long. Indigo, Ollie, Polychrome, and Heathcliff. Jellia, even Pete, although it was harder to feel sorry for him. Mombi wasn't going to give me any time for moping. She closed her eyes and snapped her fingers as soon as the rest of us sat down, and after a minute, Nox shuffled into the room. Being connected to the quadrant had a lot of drawbacks. Pure power on the one hand, being summoned like a dog when you wanted time alone on the other. "Let's get down to business," Mombi said gruffly. "The landscape has shifted a little, to say the least. That tends to happen a lot around here, doesn't it?" "Dorothy's power is eating her alive," Gert answered, "and Glinda is the one who was helping her. But from what Amy discovered in Kansas, it seems more and more possible that the Gnome King has been moving against us all along. It's entirely possible that he brought Amy to Oz once he realized that Dorothy would be swallowed up by its magic, and now that Glinda's dead—" "Is Glinda dead?" Nox interrupted, staring at Glamora. "How do we know for sure?" "The spell I perfumed on the battlefield would have found any traces of Glinda if she still remained in Glamora," Mombi said. Glamora smiled gently. "It's me, Nox, I promise. But the final battle with my sister had given me important information that will factor into our plans. I was able to see inside her mind in all those moments, and I know why Dorothy and Glinda's paths diverged." She looked at me. "But I'm not the only one with a connection to our enemies, am I, Amy? You have Dorothy's shoes. You can tap into her power to see what Dorothy's planning next." "No," Nox said immediately, jumping to his feet. "It's not safe. We've covered this already. I don't care what Amy says about those shoes protecting her. She can't use magic in Oz." "I'm right here," I said sharply. "I can speak for myself. I also have news. I can kill Dorothy. The shoes seem to have broken whatever link we had." Glamora smiled again, her blue eyes glittering. "Why don't I start by telling you what I saw in Glinda's mind," she said.